Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're looking at the New Warriors today. I don't have any kind of lead up because this is such a team of nobodies. So it's New Warriors #1. But just before we get into it, if you enjoyed the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, go subscribe to my Patreon. Links are in the description, gives you early access to everything I do. Helps out the channel, helps to buy new comics. Alright, so it's 1990. Somebody at Marvel is doing the thing where you scoop up a whole bunch of old properties that aren't being used for anything else. And you go, I don't know, why don't we smash them together in a team and see if that works? So they took a bunch of guys that nobody was particularly interested in and then gave them a new 90s character. Can you spot the 90s character? From Marvel Boy, Firestar, Namorita, Kid Nova, Speedball, and Night Thrasher. Which one is the 90s one? And man, does this team suck. Marvel Boy just sucks. Nova, he's a fairly blasé kind of character, except it's not just Nova, it's Kid Nova, which sucks. Speedball absolutely sucks. One of the worst characters in Marvel. Namorita and Firestar are like, okay, but they're also, Namorita's okay, but she's always just been a supporting player for Namor. And Firestar's fine, but I think she maybe has a little bit of okay, but we can put you in the comic, but are people going to start thinking that Spider-Man and Iceman are going to show up? And then Night Thrasher, does he exist outside of the pages of the New Warriors? I don't think so. So we might as well get right into the cover, because there's not a whole lot to say about these guys. It's such a random collection of sidekicks and minor characters. So we can start with the cover. That's an absolutely fine cover. Got a bit of a giant-size X-Men #1 feel, which is on here. They did a weird thing where they decided to show the covers for all sorts of better comics behind them here. I guess maybe trying to suggest that this one is the best #1 of all. But, you can always do worse than having all your characters just kind of bursting out from the cover towards you. And this is Mark Bagley. And Mark Bagley is, if nothing else, Mark Bagley's solid. Not particularly spectacular, but definitely solid. And this is the Heroes for the 90s. It's so 90s. All right, so this is from the ground up. Started at the bottom, now we're here. So it's going to be written by Fabian Nicieza. So it's not going to be a work of art, but it probably won't be offensively bad. And drawn by Mark Bagley. So Mark Bagley is a guy I've never been particularly fond of. I first became aware of him on Amazing Spider-Man when he was the guy who stepped in after Eric Larson left. I wasn't particularly fond of his style. I think I stuck around long enough to see the first couple of issues with Carnage. And then I was just like, okay, this guy's just going to stick around, and I just don't need to see any more of this. Mark Bagley's story, though, is interesting. I was a bit of a late bloomer, tried to break into comics for years, couldn't get it done. That kind of thing happens. And in 1983, he was working for Lockheed Martin. And that time, Jim Shooter had an idea to basically have an open tryout for anybody who wanted to work in comics. It was the Marvel tryout book. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with this. I remember seeing a copy of this in my kindergarten class, which would have been around the time it came out. And what it was basically, it gave you everything you needed to show off your skills. So for writers, they gave you a breakdown on how to submit a pitch. For pencilers, they gave you just blank sheets of paper and a script and said, go. For inkers, they gave you blue line reproductions of, I believe it was John Romita drawings. They would give you examples for, okay, here's how you submit lettering. And then, here's some finished pages with blank areas where you could submit some lettering. I believe they had an area for colors too. Every aspect of putting together a comic book that wasn't editorial or something like that. You could, in 1983, get a copy of the Marvel tryout book and go, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to show them I'm a good enough colorist that I can work for Marvel Comics. And a buddy of Mark Bagley's apparently got a copy of this book and gave it to him. And he's like, dude, just give it a shot. And Mark Bagley's 27 at this time. I think he probably figures his chances passed. But he's like, all right. And he finished up a pencil submission, sent that in. And what do you know? He got picked as the guy who won the penciler section of the Marvel tryout book. So that won him a job with Marvel to at least, get a little bit of work in and show what he could do. And he started off, the way that you started off in Marvel in the 80s, which is the correct way. You do fill-in issues. You do covers. He did the Visionaries miniseries based off of the toy. There was a year or two where he drew a dozen annuals. And, he worked at it. He put in his time. And, he slowly built up his skills until 1990. This is basically the first time that Mark Bagley is getting his shot at his own book that's meant to be like a real book. Now, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Mark Bagley's art. He's definitely solid. He's a little bit house styley for me. He doesn't go too big when it comes to dynamism, but he's got a definite style. It's not a style that appeals to me personally, but I know the guy has his fans. And I mean, after the big exodus from the Image Comics guys, Mark Bagley was like Marvel's workhorse. If you needed an issue done on time and you had Mark Bagley, you were going to be okay. And one more thing of interest, this is going to be inked by Al Williamson, which always strikes me when I see it. It really shouldn't. I mean, he was just working at this time as an inker. But when I see it on stuff like New Warriors, it's like, really? It's like, well, it's just a job for Al Williamson. He doesn't care. He's just going to, put some spectacular inks on things, and then he's going to collect his paycheck, and then he's going to go about the rest of his day. So we start out with a splash page. This is introducing the new character, Night Thrasher, holding somebody over the edge of a building, probably based on the angle. And, it's not a bad splash page. The angle is a tough one. Because if you think about the physics of it, I would get stuck on it, because it's very tough to find an angle where you could have a guy standing on the ledge of a building, holding a guy over the side by his neck, at least, and make it look good. And, it mostly does. The most important thing here is that Night Thrasher looks good anyway. The guy that he's holding, not so much. And with the angle of the building, it looks very strange the way he'd be hanging down, but, it's good enough. And going with the silhouette against the moon, too. Not a bad choice. All right, so Night Thrasher asks the guy, okay, are you Richard Rider? And he's like, yeah. So he drops him over the side of the building. Halfway down, his eyes glow up, and he flies back up. So Richard Rider, if you're not familiar, is Nova. He was a character from the 70s. Apparently, at this point, he was supposed to have lost his powers. And this is Night Thrasher's way of trying to jumpstart them again. Flies back up. Nova says, hey, how'd you know that it would make my powers come back? Night Thrasher goes, I didn't. And we wait for the rim shot. And that pisses off Nova. He goes flying at him, but he gets flipped because Night Thrasher, he's just better than everybody at the fighting stuff. So that's it for that sequence. Nothing particularly special looking in any of this, but it doesn't really matter too much. This is a bit more old school storytelling. We're right around the time when the Image guys are really getting steam. Liefeld, McFarlane, Jim Lee, Silvestri, all those guys. But there hasn't been like a trickle down yet where the other artists around them have really picked up the clue, it feels like, that this is how you make money in comics in 1990. So we're going to get like lots of small panels showing the progression of the action. And, just making sure that things are clear instead of going for anchor images, which is, what the kids want to see. All right, so from there, we're going to cut to outside of Avengers Mansion, I think it is, or is it Avengers HQ at this point? It is Avengers Mansion, where Marvel Boy shows up. Marvel Boy is a young Vance Astro, who would eventually go on to lead the Guardians of the Galaxy in the Jim Valentino incarnation. But at this point, he's just a kid in a cape with telekinetic powers. So him approaching Avengers Mansion and using his telekinetic stuff triggers the defense mechanisms, which a bunch of like robot coils and tentacles and shit that all attack him. And he's like, all right, this is my chance to show them what I can do. And he turned the page and he's been captured by all the robot tentacles because he's just not that good yet. Which I like, it's a fun bit. And Captain America just like opens the front door and I guess to, yell, get off my lawn or something. And the whole point of this is Marvel Boy wants to crash Avengers Mansion so that he can show off and they'll ask him to join them. Kind of like what Spider-Man did with the Fantastic Four. That didn't work either. But Captain America goes, oh, yes, Marvel Boy, I do know you. I've heard of you. You're not good enough yet. You're going to need to go back to the minor leagues, work on your defense, work on your skating, and maybe we'll see you in a couple of years. Sound good? So Marvel Boy can't do nothing except fly away in his dumb cape. And as he's flying away, he happens across a building where Night Thrasher and Nova are hanging out in costume chatting. And they're going to invite Marvel Boy to join their AAA team. Just a little convenient, but this is just kind of how superheroes meet up at this point, it feels like. Eric Larson pulled this as well in The Revenge of the Sinister Six, where, Spider-Man was swinging by, and Sandman just kind of happened to catch his attention because he was on a roof that he was swinging close to. And again, lots of little panels, a lot of dialogue too. No particularly interesting images. Everything looks fairly solid. From there, we're going to cut to a park in Queens, where there has been some ground soil contamination. So it's 1990, there's an eco problem. The ground has pollutants in it. And that's giving all the local kids cancer, apparently. They're playing on the monkey bars, they're catching the cancer. It's a horrible situation. So nobody's allowed on the monkey bars anymore. So some EPA equivalent is showing up to try and clean up the mess, and they've got some university class that's going to quiz them on how they're going to go about doing that. And among the people doing the quizzing is Namor's cousin, Namorita. So this is going to be the start of the threat here. Decent shot here with all of the trucks pulled in. You get some like small houses and shit in the background. There's a fair amount of detail going on for not a very large panel. All right, so from there we're going to cut. Again, we're cutting to Midtown Manhattan. And this is going to be at Night Thrasher's Fortress. So he's rented himself like some office space in Manhattan. So you know he's got money. More money than Valiant, anyway. And yeah, so he set up like a computer lab, and he's kind of showing Nova and Marvel Boy around. And we learn that he's on some kind of mission. We don't exactly know what that mission is just yet. But apparently he's got like just about limitless resources. And he's been using all this time to just train and just acquire information. So Nova figures, okay, wait a minute, this is how you got the information on me, like how you found out that I'm Nova. You hacked the Fantastic Four's mainframe. Because the Fantastic Four knew about this. And he's like, no, I couldn't hack the Fantastic Four. Their shit's way too advanced. They gave their information to S.H.I.E.L.D. I hacked S.H.I.E.L.D. And now he's hacking information about the next person they're going to target to try and get to join the team, which is Firestar. Again, so many tiny, tiny panels. But it's decent stuff in terms of just showing everything you need to see. And at the same time, you know, there's a little bit of style to the faces. It's not completely house style. I've seen a little bit of Mark Bagley's early stuff. And yeah, he just looks like everyday Joe Schmo kind of thing, which I'm sure Jim Shooter absolutely loved. By this point, he's been working in comics for like 6 or 7 years, and he's developed his own flair. He's also like 33 or 34, I guess. Just more proof that if you're like getting older and you've never done regular comics work, and you know, you think you're okay, but you know, you're just not crossing that bar, just get the reps in. Make a commitment to draw full pages regularly. Don't worry too much about making them perfect. Just get them done, move on to the next one. If it sucks, that's okay. You're working on another one tomorrow. You keep getting those pages under your belt. You figure out the problems in your style. You work out those skills pretty quick. Even at an older age, like, you know, my stuff, I'm like 46. My stuff looks way better than it did 2 years ago just because I've been drawing regularly now. So anyway, that's the PSA part of the video out of the way. Back to Night Thrasher. He's going to try and get in touch with Firestar, but he's going to do it a little differently than how he did with Nova and Marvel Boy, where he finds out her phone number and calls her house and says, I know who you are, and I'm going to tell everybody unless you meet me at this location at this time. So he's going to blackmail her into joining the New Warriors. And I guess Firestar is like, no, they're going to find out about the cartoon I was in. And she goes flying out the window. And then we cut again. We're doing a lot of scene changes in this. And I mean, like, there's 6 members, I think, of the New Warriors. And you got to get a little bit of time in with each one, and you got to set up your situation. We don't have time to linger on anything. So we've already met 5 of them. We're saving the worst for last as we meet Speedball. And Speedball is hanging out with his mom. And Speedball is a douchey little teenager. And not only that, but Speedball's only going to get 3 panels because that's all we're willing to devote to him. All right, so back to that park, the cancer park, where that environmental organization is working to try and dig up the source of the contamination so that it can, I don't know, take it out of the area and, you know, dispose of it safely, I suppose. And, you know, big shot here of like a big old Visionaries looking vehicle. So Mark's getting his experience in there. Yeah, so digs around in the park area here, wakes something up. And the something that it wakes up is apparently fucking Terrax. And Terrax, of course, is one of the previous Heralds of Galactus, who I believe was killed in an issue of Fantastic Four. And this page here, pretty damn good, I gotta say. For Mark Bagley, you know, not a guy I'm particularly fond of, this is all some good shit, where Terrax awakens and just like his body just kind of reforms. Got some good backlighting and underlighting going on this like revivifying corpse. It's pretty damn good shit. And Namorita is right on site, so that's nice. Cut from there, because we're still cutting. This is still the build-up to the fight. At the place where Firestar was supposed to meet Night Thrasher, they get there a little bit early. Firestar shows up pretty quick, and I'm not sure exactly what she does to Nova and Marvel Boy. It seems like she melts something around them or something. I don't even know what's going on there. But yeah, she's pissed off, but Night Thrasher's smug, so I think that's enough to, like, brass out getting her to join the team. Nice shot of her flying up, too. I'll be honest, I've always kind of liked Firestar, but yeah, she is definitely like a B-tier character. And probably one of the reasons I liked Firestar when I was a kid was because in the Marvel Series 2 trading card set, she had her own card, which was drawn by Art Adams. And an Art Adams card had a bit more cachet than just about anybody else's cards. Art Adams drew a card for Fin Fang Foom that convinced me Fin Fang Foom was cool. Alright, so as Night Thrasher and Firestar are, you know, they're still kind of spatting it out a little bit. There's a big old rumble. So there's a disturbance in the force, which they have to go investigate. That, of course, is whatever shit's going down in the park with Terrax. And she decides to kind of join this bunch of nobodies to see if she can help them take him down. And then we cut back to the park for a splash page. So he's saving it because, like, yeah, everything to do with exposition, he's using multiple panels. He's using probably all the tools Jim Shooter ever taught him. All I want to see out of you is heads and clear body positioning and flat static shots that show the background. But that was all a ploy because he was saving up pages so that he could do some big old splashes of Terrax terrorizing Namorita and probably those cancer kids. That's an okay splash. Not too fantastic, but, you know, it doesn't have anything on that previous page that he did, to be honest. But this is the right spot to put a splash page in. And we're also setting up some dynamics with our characters. This isn't going to be a bunch of guys that get along too well, but they're also not going to be like fucking Brigade, who are constantly at each other's throats to the point where you don't want to hear any of them talk, except for when they say your prayers. But so far we're learning Night Thrasher is the driven leader man. Nova he's the Human Torch, where he's all brash, and he doesn't like the leader man because he doesn't like his tactics. Marvel Boy's all like, I'm just happy to be here to show off my stuff. And Firestar, you know, she's like sassy redhead girl. That's okay. Everybody loves a sassy redhead. And then, back to the many panels. So Namorita flies at Terrax, gets smacked in the face by a whole bunch of dirt. That's Terrax's deal, is that he's got dirt powers. Smashes her down, I guess, through a car. Yeah, there's some good shots going on here. And when he's sure she's down, he's going to go down and retrieve his axe, because that would have been buried with him. And yeah, like tiny panels, but, you know, when he's got to draw a little action thing, a very little action thing, he's making it look okay. And then, of course, once he's got his axe, he turns, because the team has showed up, and the voiceover on the TV goes, "Who are these brave new warriors who have burst onto the scene?" So we've got our title drop. And Speedball, who's still shopping with his mom, is watching one of the TVs. I think they're in an electronics store. And he's like, cool, I got to go get in on that because nobody will invite me. And he uses the power of Steve Ditko to turn into his Speedball persona and bounces away, because that's his whole deal, is he bounces. So first Nova swoops in, gets swatted aside easily, because he's, you know, the Human Torch character. He has to be first. Night Stalker instructs Firestar to take out the axe. Tiny panel. And is maybe successful. It looks like it maybe breaks here. And Terrax is enraged. He's like, I won't be burned to death again, referring back to Fantastic Four number 260, apparently. So I guess that was how he died before. In a panel that looks pretty Kirby there. I appreciate the attempt, actually. I don't see Mark Bagley stretching beyond his usual style very often. Not that I've seen a ton of Mark Bagley. But, you know, it's cool to see him just trying out some different kind of things. And he gets smacked off his dirt slide by Namorita and goes flying here. Again, good shot here of him getting knocked flying. Night Thrasher moves in it. Oh no, he's on a skateboard. I just noticed that. Yeah, he's on the... Okay, Jesus Christ, I had no idea. That's awful. So yeah, he's throwing like smoke pellets to try and blind Terrax. And Terrax is like, I used to be a fucking herald and had to navigate in deep space. What do you think your smoke pellets are actually doing? Grabs him by the head and tosses him. But Marvel Boy catches him telekinetically, and the dude who was in charge of the environmental agency, whichever, kind of calls Night Thrasher aside so that they can talk strategy while this battle's going on. Nothing too great here, other than, again, kind of impressive being able to do, you know, like a fairly involved fight in very, very small panels. One thing I appreciate is that there's different kinds of attacks going on. And there's like switch-ups and strategy. And, you know, just trying to keep the fight interesting. Because that's always the hardest thing in a fight. Is to not just turn it into a Liefeldy punch fest. because that's so fucking boring. Namorita, like, hoists Terrax up off the Earth and slams him back down again, which, again, enrages him. He's very ragey. And at that point, Speedball shows up. So I guess the day is saved. And bounces all over the place, bounces off Terrax a bunch of times. That's fun, I will admit that. And Marvel Boy does a thing with telekinesis where he kind of grabs Speedball into his speed field. He's, like, surrounded by, like, rubber bubbles, essentially. And compresses them telekinetically. And throws that at Terrax, figuring that that will compress, like, the kinetic power of them, which apparently works. Man, that's an interesting looking panel to do that in. Would have been kind of tough to pencil and ink, I would think. Like, if you're doing both pencils and inks all in one go, yeah, you can do it because you're applying, like, different layers of ink and then white media and then probably ink over that and etc. But as a penciler and inker, I think, like, a combo team, I think that would be actually kind of difficult. And now Terrax is in, like, a mindless rage, just screaming, you know, I will kill you all. And, like, looking like he's basically falling apart. Like, cool shots of him as just, he's almost like a pile of rubble himself. And at this point, Night Thrasher's like, okay, we know what we have to do here, actually. We need to separate him from the dirt, because he's replenishing himself directly from the soil. So Nova and Namorita swoop in, and they kind of scoop up Terrax and throw him up, and he pretty much explodes. And fun stuff with, like, Namorita and Nova. They're portraying Nova as the kind of guy who flirts with any girl that's in the vicinity. I think he tried it briefly with Firestar, and it didn't work. And now he's trying it with Namorita, and, you know, that's not working either. But it's a fun dynamic where, you know, he just keeps trying to, like, hit on them like a little kid, essentially. And then they just kind of slap him down constantly. So yeah, the Terrax thing is dead, although it's kind of becoming clear at this point that this wasn't actually Terrax. The environmental agency guy describes it as more of a sentient energy form, which requires constant ground soil replenishment. And they were monitoring it throughout the fight. And when he got separated from the ground soil, his power, like, depleted immediately. And then as soon as he made contact again, it would swell back up. So getting it some distance from the ground for, you know, longer than a couple of seconds was more than the energy form could handle, and it just kind of disintegrated. And at that point, the real superheroes show up to clean up, and the New Warriors turn around and go, Captain Amazing! And it's like, close. We got Quasar, who looks a little bit like Greg Kinnear. But no, it's, yeah, Quasar, and Captain America, and She-Hulk. Not the best-looking versions of each, but again, you know, they're fine. They all look okay. Nothing ever really looks bad in a Mark Bagley book. It's just, it doesn't usually look as good as, like, if we were talking about Bagley books on, like, a hotness scale, a Bagley book, it feels like never gets above, like, a strong 6. It also doesn't fall lower than a 5. It just kind of sits in the pocket there and, you know, wavers a little bit. So the real superheroes take the environmental agency guy and kind of walk off with him so that they can actually wrap up the problem, leaving the New Warriors to just kind of sit and go, oh, well, I guess we're done. Maybe we should go home and, like, go take a nap or something. And they're all just, you know, kind of bickering about the fact that they kind of got left at the wayside there when they were the ones that did all the work. And Speedball's still here, like he's pretending he was invited. And Night Thrasher takes the opportunity to go, yeah, good job, team. We're a team. And puts his hand in. And Speedball immediately puts his in first, which I find kind of funny. And then, you know, he's slowly joined by everybody else. And they'd all do the big hands in thing. And they go, we will make a pact to fight evil from this day. No, they say, what do we call ourselves? And Speedball's like, well, on the TV, they had a name for us. They called us the New Warriors with a logo and everything. I guess that's what we're going to be called. And Night Thrasher's like, that's it. End of discussion. And the beginning of a legend. Which sounds a little bit like they just expected to get the one issue out and then nobody would like it. But, you know, there's 74 more of these fucking things somehow. So yeah, that's New Warriors #1. It's fine. You know, it's kind of a standard issue, first issue. The art's pretty good. The writing's inoffensive, which is about as much as you can hope for from a Fabian Nicieza script, I think. Looks like Mark Bagley got a pretty good run on this. He got about 23 issues. And then, like, Derek Robertson picked up the slack after that, which is always weird when I see Derek Robertson drawing superhero comics. But, I mean, that's a good start, is getting, like, a solid creative team on there and sticking them with it for a while. That was kind of the problem with Morbius, I think, in that they jettisoned Ron Wagner way too soon. You get to the point where you can get, like, a couple of years' worth of Mark Bagley on this. It's never going to completely knock your socks off, but you can look forward to having that same, pretty high level of quality month after month. Like, I'll never buy a Mark Bagley book if I can help it, but, I got respect for the guy because he's pretty good at what he does. I just don't 100% like the way he does it. So yeah, that's another 90s #1 in the bag. Could be worse. We've seen worse. We've seen much worse. I really ought to make like a worst of playlist, or maybe like a worst of like Supercut or something. That's an idea, but that's the kind of thing, man, that would take a long time to put together. But for this one, anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over and subscribe on my Patreon. It gives you early access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can join the Blood Force Discord server. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.